The moon, called Velith 9, had no name worth remembering. It was a dead rock spinning slowly around a dying star at the edge of unclaimed space. Nothing lived there. Nothing had lived there for thousands of years. The silver dust that covered its surface had not been touched by a single footprint in all that time. Captain Jonah Marin did not come to Velith 9 looking for anything special. He came looking for metal. His ship, the Rust and Reason, was a patchwork thing held together by welding scars and stubbornness. It was old, it was ugly, but it flew, and that was enough for Jonah. He made his living pulling valuable minerals from forgotten moons and selling them at colony stations. It was not a glamorous life, but it was honest. His crew was small. Dex was his engineer, a young man with quick hands and a mouth that never stopped talking. He could fix anything with wire and willpower. Mira was the ship's medic, a calm woman with gentle eyes who had lost her younger sister to a border war 3 years ago. She carried that grief quietly, like a stone in her pocket. And then there was Tavik, a tall insectoid alien of the Vryn species. Tavik had once been a smuggler. Now he was trying to be something better. He did not talk much about his past. They landed on Velith 9 just after the local sun dipped below the horizon. The surface was cold and still. Dex ran the mineral scanner from inside the ship, while Jonah and Tavik suited up and stepped outside. "Nothing worth selling so far," Dex said through the radio. "Wait, hold on. I am picking up something underground, about 200 meters below the surface." "Mineral deposit?" Jonah asked. "No. It is, I do not know what it is. It has a rhythm, like a pulse," Dex replied. Jonah looked at Tavik. Tavik's compound eyes reflected the starlight, but showed nothing. They began to dig. The ground was hard beneath the dust, layers of ancient rock packed tight by time. But eventually, the drill broke through into open space, and a breath of warm air rose from the darkness below. That should not have been possible on a dead moon. They climbed down into a chamber that made all 3 of them go silent. It was enormous. The walls were made of a crystal that glowed with a faint blue light, like the last memory of a star. Strange symbols covered every surface, flowing and beautiful, written in a language none of them recognized. The air smelled sweet, like flowers that no longer existed anywhere in the galaxy. And in the center of the chamber, resting on a raised platform of white stone, was a pod. It was long and narrow, made of something that looked like glass but was not glass. Inside the pod, perfectly still, lay a woman. She was not human. Her skin was the color of pale lavender. Her hair was silver white, spread around her head like a halo. Across her arms and neck and face, thin lines ran beneath her skin, and those lines glowed faintly with the same blue light as the walls. She looked peaceful. She looked dead. But the pod hummed, very softly, like a heart that refused to stop beating. "What is this place?" Mira whispered. She had come down to join them, unable to stay away once Jonah described what they found. Tavik had not moved. He stood near the entrance, his long limbs pulled close to his body. His antennae were flat against his head. He was afraid. "Tavik," Jonah said, "you know what this is." Tavik was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "Selari." The word meant nothing to the humans, but the way Tavik said it meant everything. He said it the way people say the names of ghosts. They were an old race, Tavik explained. Very old. They could feel emotions, not just their own. Everyone's. They could share feelings across space, across entire star systems. They built cities that sang. They created art made of pure emotion. They were beautiful. Were, Mira repeated. The Concord of Silence destroyed them, Tavik said. 4,000 years ago. The Concord is a coalition of the elder races. They keep order in the galaxy. They decided the Selari were too dangerous, a species that could make others feel things, really feel things, could start revolutions without firing a single weapon. So the Concorde ordered them erased, quietly, efficiently, billions of them gone in a single galactic cycle. The chamber felt colder now. And this one? Jonah asked, looking at the woman in the pod. A survivor, maybe, someone who sealed herself away. The pod is a stasis coffin. It was never meant to be opened. Tavik stepped back toward the entrance. Captain, we should leave. If the Concorde finds out we discovered this, they will come for us. They will come for all of us. Jonah did not answer. He walked closer to the pod. The symbols on its surface pulsed gently as he approached, as if the chamber itself could feel his presence. Mira followed him and knelt beside the pod. She studied the flowing script etched into the white stone beneath it. I think this is a form of old galactic common, Mira said slowly. Give me a moment. She traced the symbols with her fingers, her lips moving silently. Then she read the words aloud. I chose to sleep because no one chose for me to live. Nobody spoke. The words hung in the air like smoke. Outside, the dead moon turned silently in the dark. Inside, the pod hummed its tiny, stubborn heartbeat. We are taking her with us, Jonah said. Captain, did you not hear what I just told you? Tavik said. The Concorde erased an entire civilization. They will not think twice about erasing one small human ship. I heard you, Jonah said. We are taking her with us. Jonah, Dex said through the radio from the ship above. I am with Tavik on this one. This is not our fight. We are salvagers, not soldiers. She is not dead, Dex. She is sleeping. She put herself in this box because the entire galaxy looked at her people dying and did nothing. Everyone looked away. Everyone stayed silent. Jonah put his hand on the surface of the pod. It was warm. She did not die. She gave up, and that is not the same thing. Mira stood up. She looked at Jonah for a long time. Then she looked at the woman in the pod, at the soft glow of her veins, at the peaceful and heartbreaking expression on her face. He is right, Mira said. We take her. Tavik made a sound that might have been a sigh or a prayer. You humans, he said quietly. You beautiful, stupid humans. It took them 4 hours to carefully move the pod to the ship. Dex rigged a gravity sled. Tavik helped, despite his fear. Mira monitored the pod's energy readings the entire time, making sure the heartbeat never stopped. As the rust and reason lifted off from Velith 9, and the dead moon shrank to a small gray dot behind them, Jonah sat in the cargo bay beside the pod. The blue light from the woman's veins painted soft patterns on the metal walls. He did not know her name. He did not know her language. He did not know if she could be saved. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was not going to leave her in the dark. 3 days passed aboard the Rust and Reason, and the woman in the pod did not move. The ship drifted through the quiet black of unclaimed space, while the crew worked around the clock, trying to understand the alien technology that held her prisoner. Dex opened every panel he could find on the pod's exterior. Inside, the components were nothing like anything he had ever seen. There were no circuits, no wires, no chips. Instead, there were thin threads of crystal, woven together like veins in a leaf, and they pulsed with light in a pattern that almost looked like breathing. This is not a machine, Dex said on the second day, rubbing his tired eyes. This is closer to a living thing. I do not even know where to start. Mira was having her own problems. She ran every medical scan she could through the pod's transparent surface. The woman's body was alive. Her heart beat. Her brain showed activity. But everything was slowed down to almost nothing. 1 heartbeat every 4 minutes. 1 brainwave cycle every 10. She was not dead. She was barely alive. And the pod seemed designed to keep her exactly that way. Forever. The stasis is not just preserving her, Mira told Jonah. It is holding her down. like the pod decided she should not wake up, and it is enforcing that decision. Can we override it? I would not even know which part to override. This technology is 4,000 years ahead of us. Jonah contacted the only person he thought might help. Dr. Yemisi Okafor was a xenobiologist on the human colony world of New Accra. She was brilliant, stubborn, and owed Jonah a favor from years ago. He sent her everything they had through an encrypted channel. Dr. Okafor studied the data for a full day. Then she called back with a voice full of wonder and frustration. The Salari did not build machines the way we do, she explained. Their technology was biological and emotional. That pod is responding to the occupant's emotional state. She sealed herself inside during a moment of absolute despair. The pod read that despair as a command. It interpreted her grief as a wish to never wake up. So it will not let her. So we need to change the command, Jonah said. You need to change how she feels, from the outside, while she is unconscious, in a technology you do not understand. Dr. Okafor paused. Jonah, I do not think this is possible. But Jonah was human, and humans had a long and proud history of doing things that were not possible. Dex tried first. He attempted to feed electrical signals into the pod's crystal network, mimicking the patterns of positive brain activity. The pod rejected every signal. It was like trying to speak to an ocean with a flashlight. Mira tried next. She used her medical equipment to send carefully measured bioelectric pulses into the pod, trying to stimulate the woman's nervous system. The pod's glow flickered once, then settled back to its slow, sad rhythm. Tavik watched from the doorway. The Salari were empaths, he said quietly. Their entire civilization was built on shared feeling. You are trying to wake her with electricity. That is like trying to start a fire with ice. On the evening of the third day, Jonah sent the crew to rest. They argued, but he insisted. When they were gone, he pulled a metal crate next to the pod and sat down. The cargo bay was dim. The only light came from the soft blue glow of the woman's veins and the faint stars outside the viewport. Jonah put his hand on the surface of the pod. It was warm, as always. He could feel the hum against his palm. And then he did the only thing he knew how to do. He talked. I do not know if you can hear me, he said. I do not even know your name. But I am going to talk anyway, because that is what humans do when we do not know what else to do. He told her about Earth, about blue oceans and green forests and cities that reached into the sky. He told her about human history, the ugly parts and the beautiful parts. He told her about the wars that nearly ended everything, and about the people who chose to rebuild every single time. We are not a smart species, he said with a small laugh. We fight each other over stupid things. We break everything we touch. But we also write music that makes strangers cry. We build hospitals in war zones. We run into burning buildings to save people we have never met. He told her about Mira, who lost her sister, but still chose to heal others. About Dex, who grew up with nothing and turned himself into the best engineer Jonah had ever seen. About Tavik, who walked away from everything he knew because he decided he wanted to be good. You closed your eyes because the galaxy gave up on your people, Jonah said. I understand that. I do. But I need you to know something. Not everyone is like them. Not everyone stayed silent. He paused. His hand was still on the pod. Beneath his fingers, the hum seemed to change. Just slightly. Just enough. You do not have to be alone anymore, he said. The blue light in the woman's veins grew brighter, slowly at first, then faster, spreading like sunrise across her skin. The crystal threads inside the pod began to pulse in a new rhythm, quicker, warmer, alive. Mira came running from her quarters. Dex stumbled in behind her, half asleep. Tavik stood in the doorway, with his compound eyes wide. What did you do? Mira asked, staring at the readings on her scanner. "I just talked to her," Jonah said. The solid transparency softened, becoming liquid, becoming mist. The crystal threads released their hold one by one, like fingers slowly letting go. The hum grew louder, then shifted into something that almost sounded like a note of music. And then the pod opened. The woman gasped. It was the most terrible and beautiful sound Jonah had ever heard. 4,000 years of sleep, broken in a single breath. Her body arched. Her hands grabbed at the air. The bioluminescent lines across her skin blazed with light so bright that everyone had to look away. Mira was at her side instantly, hands steady, voice calm. "You are safe. You are safe. Breathe. Just breathe." The woman's eyes opened. They were the color of liquid silver, bright and deep and full of more pain than any living thing should be able to hold. She looked around the cargo bay with wild confusion. She saw the metal walls, the tangled wires, the crude human ship that was nothing like the crystal cities she remembered. Then she saw Jonah. He was still sitting on the metal crate beside her. He had not moved. His hand was still extended toward where the pod had been. His face was tired and scarred and kind. She stared at him. She did not recognize his species. She had never seen a human before. But she could feel him, even in her shattered state, even drowning in 4,000 years of grief. She could feel the warmth coming off this strange creature like heat from a fire. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice cracked. Her words came in broken galactic common, a language she had not spoken in millennia. "Why would you wake me? There is nothing left." Jonah looked at her, at this woman who had buried herself alive because the galaxy had murdered everyone she loved and no one had cared enough to stop it. At this last survivor who had chosen to sleep forever, because being the only one left was worse than not existing at all. "Yeah," he said gently. "I have heard that before. Humans say it all the time. We are usually wrong." The woman stared at him. A tear ran down her lavender cheek, catching the blue light of her own skin. It glowed as it fell. "My name is Lyra," she said. "Hello, Lyra," Jonah said. "My name is Jonah. Welcome aboard the worst ship in the galaxy." Behind him, Dex laughed. Mira smiled through her own tears. And Tavik, standing in the doorway, quietly lowered his head, in a gesture that among the Vryn meant only one thing: respect. Lyra closed her eyes again, but this time it was not forever. This time she was just resting, and for the first time in 4,000 years, she was not alone. The first week was the hardest. Lyra's body recovered quickly. Salari biology was remarkable. Her muscles remembered how to move. Her lungs remembered how to breathe deeply. The bioluminescent veins beneath her skin glowed stronger every day, shifting from faint blue to a worn, steady violet. Physically, she was healing. But her mind was a different matter entirely. She could feel everything. That was what it meant to be Salari. Emotions were not invisible to her. They were as real as light, as solid as sound. And on this small, cramped human ship, she was surrounded by feelings that hit her like waves. Dex was the loudest. His mind buzzed constantly, with restless energy, anxiety about the ship's systems, excitement about new problems to solve, and underneath it all, a loneliness he covered with jokes. Her kindness was vast and genuine, but threaded through it was a grief so sharp that Lyra sometimes had to leave the room when Mira thought about her sister. Tavik carried guilt, heavy old guilt that sat in his chest like a stone. He had known about the Salari, his species had known, and they had said nothing. And then there was Jonah. Jonah was the strangest one of all. His emotions were a storm. Warmth and stubbornness and old pain and fierce protectiveness, all tangled together in a way that made no logical sense. He should have been a mess. By Sailari standards, his emotional state was chaos. But somehow, it all held together. Somehow, the chaos was the thing that made him strong. Lyra sat in the corner of the cargo bay on most days, wrapped in a blanket Mira had given her. She ate the simple food the humans offered. She drank their bitter coffee and said nothing about the taste. She watched them go about their lives on this ugly, wonderful ship, and she tried to remember what it felt like to be part of something. On the fourth day, Mira sat beside her and asked gently if she wanted to talk about her people. Lyra was silent for a long time. Then she spoke. "We were builders," she said. "Not of machines, of connections. Our cities did not have walls. They had fields of shared emotion. When you entered a Sailari city, you could feel the joy of 10,000 people welcoming you. Our art was not something you looked at. It was something you felt inside your chest. Our music was not sound. It was the experience of 100 hearts beating together." Mira listened. Dex had stopped pretending to work on a conduit nearby. Tavik stood in the corridor, close enough to hear. "We believed that if every species could feel what others felt, there would be no war," Lyra continued. "No cruelty. How can you hurt someone when you can feel their pain as your own? We were wrong. Not about the idea, about the galaxy." She told them about the Concord of Silence, a coalition of the oldest and most powerful races in the galaxy. They did not rule through armies or weapons. They ruled through order, through systems, through the careful, quiet removal of anything that threatened stability. The Sailari threatened stability, not with violence, with truth. "A Sailari empath once visited a Concord Council meeting," Lyra said. "She did nothing aggressive. She simply allowed the delegates to feel the suffering of the species they had conquered, the fear of the colonies they had silenced, the grief of the worlds they had stripped bare. The delegates panicked. They called it an attack. They called us emotional contagions, a biological weapon. They were afraid," Jonah said from the doorway. "Afraid that if people actually felt the cost of what they were doing, they would stop." Lyra nodded. The extermination order was passed within one galactic cycle. They did not send warships. They sent disease. Targeted biological agents that attacked only Sailari DNA. It spread through our connected emotional networks. The very thing that made us beautiful, made us vulnerable. One by one, our cities went dark. Our worlds went quiet. She paused. Her hands were trembling. The light beneath her skin flickered. "I was off-world when it happened," she whispered, "studying dying stars at a remote research station. I felt them die. All of them. Billions of my people, and I felt every single one. The fear, the confusion, the moment when each light went out. It took 11 days. 11 days of feeling my entire civilization scream and then go silent." Nobody spoke. Mira was crying quietly. Dex had turned away, his jaw tight. Tavik's antennae were pressed flat against his head. "When it was over, I was alone," Lyra said. "The last one. I traveled for years looking for survivors. There were none. Every world, every colony, every hidden outpost, empty, clean, as if we had never existed at all. The Concord erased even our records from the galactic archives. Our art, our music, our history, gone." "So you sealed yourself in the pod?" Jonah said. "I could not live as the last echo of a dead song," Lyra said. "I found Velas 9. I built the tomb from memory. I wrote our story on the walls so that someone someday might find it and know we were real. And then I closed my eyes." She looked at Jonah. "I did not expect to open them again." Dex broke the silence first. He did it the human way. He got angry. 4,000 years, he said. His voice was shaking. 4,000 years, and nobody said anything? Nobody stood up? The whole galaxy just watched and did nothing? The galaxy was afraid, Tavik said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. The Vrin's voice was heavy with shame. My species knew. Many species knew. But the Concord was powerful. Standing against them meant being erased yourself. So everyone looked away. Everyone stayed silent. He looked at Lyra. I am sorry. I know that means nothing, but I am sorry. Lyra felt his sincerity. It was small, and it was late, and it did not bring anyone back. But it was real. She nodded. The days that followed were a strange kind of healing. Lyra began to move through the ship, instead of staying in the cargo bay. She sat with Dex while he worked, and quietly pointed out that a failing power coupling was crying for attention. He stared at her, then at the coupling, then fixed it, and found she was right. She sat with Mira in the medical bay, and showed her a Salari technique for healing small wounds, using focused bioluminescent energy. Mira watched her own cut disappear under Lyra's gentle touch, and laughed in amazement. She even made Dex laugh by telling him that his emotional state reminded her of a Salari animal called a Zika, which was small and loud and always running into things. Dex pretended to be offended. He was actually delighted. Then, on the 9th day, everything changed. Tavik was monitoring long-range communications when he went very still. His compound eyes locked onto the screen. His antennae rose straight up, which among the Vrin meant one thing: danger. Captain, he said, a Concord patrol vessel has entered this sector. It is scanning for biological signatures. He turned to look at Jonah. They are looking for Salari DNA. The bridge went cold. Mira looked at Lyra. Dex looked at Jonah. Tavik's hands were shaking. They cannot know she is alive, Mira said. The tomb was sealed for 4,000 years. The pod's energy signature changed when we opened it, Tavik said. The Concord has sensors that have been watching for exactly this kind of event for millennia. They are thorough, they are patient, and they do not leave loose ends. A transmission arrived. It was cold and formal and polite in the way that powerful things are polite when they know you cannot stop them. Unregistered vessel, you are carrying a biological remnant of a classified species. Surrender the remnant for peaceful processing. Compliance will be noted. Resistance will be addressed. Lyra stood up from her seat. Her face was calm, but her light had gone dim. They found me, she said softly. They always find us. Lyra, Jonah said. You should surrender me, she said. They will let you go. I am what they want. I have always been what they want. The last piece of evidence that the Salari ever existed. Jonah looked at her. Then he looked at his crew. Then he turned to the communications panel and opened a channel. This is Captain Jonah Marin of the Rust and Reason, he said. She is not a remnant. She is a person. And you can come try to take her. He closed the channel. The bridge was silent. Jonah, Tavik said, you just declared opposition to the most powerful coalition in the galaxy. Yeah, Jonah said, I know. He turned to Lyra. Nobody is giving you up. Not today. Not ever. You are crew now. Lyra stared at him. In 4,000 years, across all the species she had known, no one had ever said anything like that to her. Her light grew bright again. The Concord ship was called the Quiet Blade. It was beautiful in the way that weapons are beautiful. Long and silver and perfectly smooth, without a single sharp edge or visible gun port. It did not need to look threatening. Everything in the galaxy already knew what it was. A Concord enforcement vessel had not been defied in over 6,000 years. The last species that tried was no longer a species. The Quiet Blade was faster than the Rust and Reason. It was bigger, stronger, and carried technology that made human ships look like children's toys. But Jonah did not run in a straight line. He ran smart. "The shattered corridor," Tavik said when Jonah told him the plan. "You want to fly through the shattered corridor. It is the only region nearby that their sensors cannot fully penetrate," Jonah said. "Dead stations, collapsed warplanes, radiation fields. Messy enough to slow them down. Messy enough to kill us too. Only if we are unlucky." Tavik closed his eyes. "I should have stayed a smuggler." The shattered corridor was exactly as bad as its name suggested. It was a stretch of space where an ancient war had destroyed everything. Broken space stations floated in the dark like the bones of dead giants. Collapsed warplanes created pockets of twisted gravity that could crush a ship like paper. Radiation storms flickered between the wreckage like silent lightning. Jonah flew through it like he had been born there. He dodged debris by instinct. He rode gravity waves like a surfer riding ocean swells. Dex worked the engines with both hands, coaxing power from systems that were never designed for this kind of abuse. Mira strapped herself in and monitored the hull integrity, calling out stress points before they became fractures. And Lyra did something she had not done in 4,000 years. She reached out with her empathic abilities. She could feel the crew of the Quiet Blade. Even across the distance of space, through the interference of the corridor, she could sense them. Dozens of minds, all cold and focused and disciplined. But she could also sense their intentions. When they prepared to change course, she felt it. When they planned to fire a tracking probe, she knew. "They are turning left," she said. "Now." Jonah banked right. A tracking probe shot past them and exploded against a dead station. "They are splitting into two pursuit patterns," Lyra said 30 minutes later. "One above, one below." Jonah dove straight through a radiation field that made the Quiet Blade's sensors go blind for 11 seconds. It was enough. They burst out of the shattered corridor, battered and shaking, but alive. Dex was laughing and swearing at the same time. Mira was checking everyone for radiation exposure. Tavik was gripping his console so hard that his claws had left marks in the metal. But they were not free. The Quiet Blade emerged from the corridor minutes later, damaged but functional. And now they were in open space with nowhere to hide. "They are hailing us," Tavik said. The face that appeared on their screen was not what any of them expected. Arbiter Solène of the Thessari race was ancient. Her skin was like cracked marble, gray and white with veins of gold. Her eyes were solid black and very calm. She did not look cruel. She looked tired. She looked like someone who had been doing the same job for so long that she had forgotten there was any other way. "Captain Marin," Solène said. Her voice was smooth and quiet. "You have shown impressive skill. Your species continues to surprise. But this chase is over. You cannot outrun us. You cannot outfight us. I am offering you a reasonable outcome." "I am listening," Jonah said. He was buying time. Dex was already working on something behind him. "Surrender the Sci-Fi," Solène said. "She will be processed peacefully. There will be no pain. Your crew will be released with full pardons and financial compensation for your trouble. This is a generous offer. I suggest you accept it." "Processed," Jonah repeated. "You mean killed?" "I mean concluded," Solène said. "The Sci-Fi chapter was closed 4,000 years ago. One surviving individual does not change the mathematics. The galaxy is stable. The Concord has maintained peace for millennia. One life does not outweigh that stability." "One life always outweighs that," Jonah said. Solène tilted her head. She studied him the way a scientist studies an unusual specimen. "You are a fascinating species, Captain. Emotional to the point of self-destruction. Do you truly intend to die for a woman you met 9 days ago?" Behind Jonah, Lyra stepped forward. I will go, she said. Everyone turned to look at her. Her light was dim, her silver eyes were full of old, familiar resignation. Lyra, Mira said, people have already died because of me, because of what I am. I will not let it happen again, not to you. She looked at Jonah. You woke me up, you showed me kindness. That is more than I had any right to hope for. Let me go. Jonah stood up from the captain's chair. He walked to Lyra and stood in front of her. He was not tall. He was not impressive. He was a middle-aged salvager with scarred hands and tired eyes. But when he looked at her, there was something in him that burned. You do not get to sacrifice yourself because you think you are not worth fighting for, he said. That is not your call anymore. You are crew. Then he turned to Dex. Is it ready? Dex grinned. Broadcasting now. Had given Dex one instruction during the chase through the corridor. Set up an open, unencrypted broadcast on every frequency that human technology could reach. Every ship, every colony, every outpost, every station where humans lived and worked and dreamed. Jonah's voice went out across the stars. This is Captain Jonah Marin of the salvage vessel Rust and Reason. I am speaking to every human who can hear me. 9 days ago, my crew found a woman. She is the last survivor of a species called the Salari. 4,000 years ago, the Concord of Silence exterminated her entire civilization. Billions of people, erased because they had the ability to make others feel. The Concord erased their history, their art, their music. They tried to erase the fact that the Salari ever existed. They almost succeeded, but one survived. She sealed herself in a tomb on a dead moon and slept for 4,000 years, because no one in the entire galaxy cared enough to stand for her people. She is awake now. She is alive. She is on my ship. And the Concord is here to finish the job. He paused. The stars were silent. The quiet blade hung in space, watching. I am not asking for permission, Jonah said. I am not asking for orders. I am asking you to show up. That is all. Just show up. Because this is what the galaxy calls order, and humans call it something else. The broadcast ended. Silence filled the bridge. Lyra was staring at Jonah with an expression that held disbelief and hope and terror all at once. Arbiter Solen's image reappeared on the screen. A moving speech, Captain, but words do not stop warships. No, Jonah agreed. They do not. Then the sensors began to light up. 1 contact, then 5, then 12, then 30. Ships, human ships, coming from every direction, a military patrol frigate from the colony of New Acra, 3 merchant vessels that had dropped their cargo to come faster, a mining barge with no weapons at all, a passenger liner that had changed course with a vote from every person on board, a retired warship crewed by veterans who had heard the broadcast and turned their old engines back on. They were small. They were scattered. They were outgunned in every possible way. They were coming anyway. Tavik watched the sensor screen with its mouth open. This is impossible, he whispered. No species does this. No species mobilizes for a stranger of another race. Lyra could feel them. Every single ship. She could feel the people inside them, the fear and the anger and the stubborn, burning, irrational determination that made humans what they were. They were terrified. They came anyway. Arbiter Solen stared at the sensor readings for a long time. Her ancient face showed something it had not shown in centuries. Uncertainty. Captain Marin, she said slowly, what have you done? Jonah looked at the screen, full of blinking lights. Ordinary people, in ordinary ships, flying toward a fight they could not win, because someone they had never met needed help. The human fleet spread out across the darkness like a handful of fireflies thrown against the night. There were 47 ships in total. Some were military. Most were not. A water tanker from the colony of Brindisi Station had emptied its cargo hold and filled it with volunteers. A family transport had dropped off its passengers at the nearest station and come alone, crewed by a husband and wife who said they could not sit still after hearing the broadcast. A science vessel full of researchers had turned around mid-expedition because their youngest crew member, a 22-year-old from Earth, had stood up in the mess hall and said, "If we do not go, who will?" They were nothing compared to the Quiet Blade. Arbiter Solen's ship could destroy all 47 of them without losing a single system. Every tactical calculation said the same thing. This was not a fight. This was a gesture. A stupid, emotional, meaningless gesture from a species that was too young and too foolish to know when to be afraid. Solen opened a channel to all ships. "This is Arbiter Solen of the Concord of Silence. You are interfering with a sanctioned enforcement action. I understand your emotional response, but emotions do not change policy. Stand down, and no action will be taken against you. Continue this course, and you will be treated as hostile." 47 ships held position. Not one moved. From the mining barge, an old woman's voice crackled across the channel. "My grandmother survived the Shanghai floods on Earth. She told me that when the water came, strangers carried her to high ground. She never learned their names. She said it did not matter. What mattered was that they showed up. We are showing up." From the retired warship, a gruff voice said simply, "We are not leaving." From the passenger liner, a child's voice came through, clear and bright. Someone had given a little girl the microphone. "Please do not hurt the lady. She has been sleeping a long time, and she just woke up." Solen closed the channel. On the bridge of the Quiet Blade, her officers waited for orders. They had never seen anything like this. In 6,000 years of enforcing Concord law, no species had ever collectively refused to move. Other species sent diplomats, lawyers, formal protests through proper channels. They did not send water tankers and families, and old women with stories about floods. Lyra stood on the bridge of the Rust and Reason. She could feel it all, the fear in every human ship, the determination that burned through that fear like sunlight through clouds. She could feel the old woman's steady courage and the child's innocent hope. She could feel 47 crews of ordinary people who had chosen to put their lives between a stranger and a warship because a man on a salvage vessel had asked them to show up. And she could feel Arbiter Solen. Behind that wall of cold logic and ancient duty, there was something small and buried, something the Arbiter had not felt in a very long time. Doubt. "Jonah," Lyra said, "open a channel. To everyone, the Concord ship as well." Jonah looked at her. "What are you going to do?" "What I was born to do." He opened the channel, every frequency, every ship, every speaker on every bridge for 1,000 kilometers in every direction. Lyra closed her eyes, and for the first time since the death of her people, she used her gift, not as a weapon, not as a defense, as a witness. She reached out with everything she had. She opened her heart like a door, and she let it pour out across the stars. She showed them the Sci-Fi. It was not words. It was not pictures. It was feeling. Pure, raw, undeniable feeling that bypassed every language and every barrier and spoke directly to the heart of every living being in range. She showed them the cities, not what they looked like, but what they felt like, the warmth of 10,000 minds connected in joy, the peace of walking through streets where no one was a stranger, the beauty of art that was not seen but experienced, that filled your chest with wonder and made you feel, just for a moment, that everything in the universe was exactly as it should be. She showed them the children, not their faces, but their laughter, the bright sparkling feeling of young minds discovering the world for the first time, the love that surrounded them like light. She showed them the music. The Sci-Fi did not play instruments. They sang with their souls. And now that music filled the empty space between ships, and it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever felt. And then she showed them the end, the silence that came when the disease spread, the confusion, the fear, the moment when connection became a curse because every death was felt by everyone. She showed them what it was like to feel 1,000,000,000 hearts stop beating, one by one, like stars going out across the sky. She showed them the 11 days, the longest 11 days in the history of the universe. She showed them what it meant to be the last one left, the absolute crushing silence of being alone in a galaxy that had decided you should not exist. On the Rust and Reason, Dex was crying. He did not try to hide it. Mira had her hands pressed against her chest, as if trying to hold her heart together. Tavik had fallen to his knees. His entire body was shaking. On the 47 human ships, hardened soldiers wept. Engineers who had not cried in 20 years broke down at their stations. The old woman on the mining barge held her hand over her mouth and sobbed. The little girl on the passenger liner held her mother's hand and said, "Mommy, I can feel the lady. She is so sad." And on the quiet blade, Arbiter Selene stood perfectly still. Her ancient black eyes were wide. Her hands, which had signed 1,000 enforcement orders without trembling, were shaking. Tears ran down her cracked marble skin, following the golden veins like rivers following valleys. She had lived for 12,000 years. She had enforced the Concord's will without question, because she believed in the mathematics. Stability required sacrifice. Order required silence. It was clean. It was logical. But now she could feel it. For the first time in her long, cold life, she could feel what that logic had cost. And it was not clean. It was not logical. It was an ocean of grief so vast that no equation could contain it. The bridge of the quiet blade was silent, except for the sound of soldiers trying to breathe. Lyra opened her eyes. The light beneath her skin was blazing, brighter than anyone had ever seen, bright enough to illuminate the entire bridge of the Rust and Reason like a small star. "Arbiter," Lyra said. Her voice was steady now, calm, strong. "You asked what I want." Selene looked at the screen. Her face was wet. Her voice was broken. "Tell me." "I want to be remembered," Lyra said. "I want my people to have existed. I want the silence to end." Arbiter Selene stood still for a very long time. The officers around her waited. The galaxy waited. Then Selene spoke a single word to her crew. "Withdraw." The quiet blade turned slowly in the darkness. Its engines powered up, and it moved away, growing smaller and smaller against the stars until it was gone. It was over. On every human ship, people were still wiping their eyes. Some were hugging each other. Some were sitting quietly, trying to understand what they had just felt. The old woman on the mining barge was laughing and crying at the same time. The little girl on the passenger liner was waving at the Rust and Reason through their window, even though she knew nobody could see her. Jonah sat in his chair and let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like years. 6 months later, Lyra stood in a garden on New Acra. The human colony world was warm and green, with wide skies and kind people, and cities that were messy and loud and full of life. It was nothing like the Salari homeworld. It was nothing like anywhere she had ever been. She loved it. The university where she now taught had given her a small plot of land behind the xenobiology building. She grew flowers there. Not ordinary flowers, Salari flowers, grown from seed memories she carried in her own biology. They glowed with soft blue light at night, and they hummed when the wind blew, and the students who walked past on their way to class always stopped to listen. She taught empathic healing. She told stories about her people. She made sure the Salari were remembered, not as data in an archive, but as living memory in the hearts of everyone who listened. The Concord of Silence had not come back. Reports said that Arbiter Selene had transmitted Lyra's empathic message to the Concord's inner council. The reaction had been seismic. For the first time in millennia, there were cracks in the foundation. Some elder races were asking questions that had not been asked in a very long time. There was no revolution, not yet, but the silence was no longer absolute. Jonah visited when he could. He still flew the Rust and Reason. He still salvaged metal from forgotten moons. But his route always brought him back to New Acra, always brought him back to the garden. He came on a warm evening when the sun was setting, and the sky was painted in shades of gold and purple. Lyra was sitting among her glowing flowers, her lavender skin catching the last light of day. She looked up when she heard his boots on the path. "You are late," she said. "The ship is slow," he said. "You know that." "The ship is a disaster. You should let Dex rebuild it." "Dex would put rockets on a toaster if I let him." She laughed. It was a sound she had learned to make again, slowly, over these months. It was not the laugh of someone who had forgotten her grief. It was the laugh of someone who had learned to carry grief in one hand and joy in the other. They did not speak for a while. They did not need to. She could feel him, and that was enough. The steady warmth, the stubbornness, the good heart that had looked at a sleeping woman on a dead moon and refused to walk away. Lyra closed her eyes. The flowers hummed around her. A last light of the sun touched her face. She had closed her eyes once to escape a galaxy that had forgotten how to feel. She had chosen to sleep forever because no one in all the stars had cared enough to stand for her people. She had given up. She had surrendered to the silence. And then a human arrived in front of her. A stubborn, scarred, ordinary human who did not know when to quit.